Today I want to give you a quick look into the TI Portal programming software. So first thing you'll notice with the TI Portal programming software is this really doesn't look like programming software. What we've done, we've created a useful tool, real easy for first-time users to be able to navigate through the TI Portal, and it points you directly into the correct location of what to do next, for example. Let's take a look at this. On this particular screen, what I have, I can open an existing project, I can migrate a project from a Step 7 Classic project, for example, or I can create a new project, or I can go online and diagnose what's going on within my system. That's the only thing I can do at this point. So it points you exactly to the steps that are needed to get your project up and running. So let's create a new project. We'll just call it Keith Test, for example, and we'll create that. And what this is doing is TI Portal is an overall project management tool. So this is creating the overall product management layout of this complete project. Portal is not only a PLC programming tool, but it's multiple PLCs, multiple HMIs, drives, network, all types of things that you use in everyday efforts. As you can see now, the tree has expanded so I can do additional things. If we go underneath devices and networks, what I can do now is I can add a new device. And what I want to do is I want to add a controller. As you see, this programming tool programs the 1200, the 1500s, 300s, 400, and the distributed controllers of ET200S controllers. What we're going to use today is we're going to use a 1500, and let's do a 1516 processor. And we'll just select this guy. It gives you a pictorial of what the image would look like. As you notice, this 1516 has two Ethernet ports for one NIC, and then an individual NIC with a single port included in the processor, and also a Profibus scanner module built into the processor as well. Let's go ahead and add that into my project. And once this adds into the project, what it'll do, it'll take us into a different view of the TI Portal that's called the device view. Okay, now inside this device view, which is included inside the project view, which is the second view of the TI Portal, just to recap, we were in the portal view initially. This is the instructional layout of how you would program and get your system up and running. And then you go to the project view, and this is physically where you do the work. Okay, in this instance, what we have is we have this 1516, and this is in my hardware configuration where I then would import and bring in my appropriate hardware design. The processor's already in it. What I want to do now is let's just bring in a couple of modules. We'll bring in a couple of discrete input modules, and let's just bring in an analog module just for kicks. Okay, I've got these modules now included in my device view. It is ready to do something. Portal is a properties-driven programming environment. If I click on this particular processor, as you can see below, these are all the properties that I can set up about this individual processor. I can set up the Ethernet address of that particular processor, for example. I can come in and set up the Profibus information. The web server, I can turn it off and on so I can display information in that fashion. But all of this is in the properties menu. What I want to do is I want to turn on system and clock memory bytes so I can get something that will be toggling as we go through this project. So I simply come in and do that. What I would do then is I would take this particular hardware config and I would download it into my processor. The download button for whatever piece of hardware I'm using is always in the same exact location. Okay? Let's go back over to my portal view because I told you this steps you through exactly what you would need to do. After we imported a device, next thing I want to do is I want to do some PLC programming. Well, every controller has a main block. Siemens has a main block as well. So let's go inside that main block and let's do some programming. What we're going to do, we're going to write a simple latch circuit. So what I want to do is I want to bring in a normally open contact, a normally closed contact, and of course a coil, and then I need a seal in. So we'll create a branch down here this area, and we will seal it in. And is that a latch circuit? Yes, that's absolutely the best latch circuit in the world because it will never unlatch. I made a mistake. Let's just correct my mistake very simply and easy. So we'll call this a start. This will be my run. this will be my stop, and this will be my run. Now these are underlined in red, denoting to me that they are not defined symbols at this point. What I can do is I can right click and I can define my tags. And where do I want to assign these individual tags? Well, actually, I want to put them in a global input area for that card that I actually imported in. So let's do a global input on these, and we'll leave that as a memory marker because I didn't put an output card in there. Let's define those tags. Those tags are now defined. Okay? If I go back into the tree structure under programming blocks, what I can do now is I can add a new block. Well, Siemens is all about having reusable code and the abilities for structured programming. So what I'd like to take a look at is doing something to create reusable code. As you can see now, I have the option for function blocks, functions, or data blocks, and additional organizational blocks, which would be cyclic interrupts and things of that fashion. What I want to do is a function block. I want to call this, let's call it latch. Let's call it latch because we're going to reuse that latch circuit multiple times inside this project. What programming format do I want to do it in? We'll stay in LAD for today's purposes. And let's add that block in. So now what it has done underneath my tree, there's my PLC and my programming blocks, it has created me a function block. So I want to reuse this particular code that's in my main block. I want to reuse this latch circuit in multiple locations. So I'm going to select it all, I'm going to cut it all, and I'm going to put it inside of my function block. Is that reusable code? Well, no, it's not at this point because it still has hard addresses in the logic. So what I want to do is I want to create reusable code. Let me minimize a window here. And what I want to do is I want to have a start local variable, and it's going to be of type bool. I want to have a stop localized variable. And since I'm using this coil as my CIL-in, this guy would be defined as an in-out. So I will call this my output. Okay? I simply take these tags now, drag them down into the hard-coded symbol variables. And what I'm doing is I'm selecting these localized placeholder variables that I can reuse this logic. Now that's reusable code. Go back to my main block because the main block is the one that's executed. How do I get that latch circuit to now run? What I would do is I would simply call it within my main routine. And since it is a function block, it has a data block that's associated with it. What is a data block? Well, data block is memory that is retained when this block is called and then is left from and then called again. For example, if I'm doing a counter or a timer, it retains that value inside of this data block. So we'll go ahead and use that. As you see, now I'm ready to put hard variables in here again. So I had something called start. There's my start. I had something called stop. There's my stop variable, and this was a run variable. And now that latch circuit is ready to be used. If I wanted to use it again, simply call it into my logic again. It has a new DB setting, and then I go in and give its names yet again. Simple programming. Let's go back over to the portal view for a second. So now, what I really want to do is I want to add an HMI screen into this configuration. So as you can see, the controllers were here. That was all the controllers that are associated with the TIE portal. And here are the HMIs that are associated, along with PC systems, drives, and control devices. You hear other manufacturers talk about one common framework. This is truly one programming software package that programs multiple devices. As you will see, when I click on the HMI panel and I go to a comfort panel, and let's bring in a 22-inch comfort panel. Now I want to program and configure my comfort panel, my HMI interface, to associate with that PLC. So let's add him in real quick. Now what this is setting up, it is setting up this complete HMI panel along with its screens and everything so we can begin our configuration. So now I have a PLC inside this project and an HMI inside this project. Let's double click on that HMI. Sorry, I didn't double click. Let's go over to the HMI screen. in this tree, in this one project, there's my PLC, here's my HMI. Now what I want to do is create screens inside this HMI. What I would do, I would add a new screen. It would be called, let's call it Keith screen. And we'll have screen 1 as our main screen. So staying with the main screen, what I want to be able to do now is associate tags from that PLC over to this particular HMI. Typically what you would do in this instance is I would go underneath connections, I would add a new connection, I would select my driver for that connection. In this instance it would be a 1500. As you can see from this driver drop-down menu list, there are multiple other devices, third-party devices, along with some legacy Siemens controllers that I can communicate with as well. I would then set up exactly how I'm communicating with this 1500. In this example, it would probably be via Ethernet, and I would set up the appropriate IP addresses. But let me show you something that's actually a little bit easier, since this is a common framework, a programming tool that programs all the devices in one tool. So let's go to this main screen. What I really want to be able to do is I want to be able to see the status of this output bit on that HMI screen. Well, let me split my screens. So now let's get to a little more real estate so we can see. I really want to see the state of this on that HMI screen. If I go back and I take a look at the HMI connections, and this is just showing you that what I did was I deleted that connection I initially had set up. I'm doing that for this purpose, and I'll show you why I'm doing this. I want to take this run command. I want to see the state of it. I can very easily drag and drop that over to the HMI screen. What that does is that sets up a lot of properties associated with that particular output field. As you see, it said I have a tag of run. I want to show the run tag over here in the state. That tag will now change states depending on how it is, the state of it within the processor. If I go back to my connections, what it also did inside the connections is it set up, go back to connections, it set up the appropriate connection path, HMI connection 1, SIMATIC S7 1500. It set up everything identical or exactly as it needed to be for those two to be able to communicate. Something else that's unique about the TIA portal as one engineering framework is I can also bring drives into this selection, just like I did the PLC and the HMI. So for instance, let's bring in a G120 drive, and I want it to talk over Ethernet, so I'll just select this particular control unit and we'll add it into our system. Now a Siemens drive, the G series drives, are a modular drive selection. You have a control unit and then you have a power section where your IGBTs are. So what I now need to do is come in and define what is my power unit that's associated with that controller. So what I'll do, I will bring in a regen power unit, a PM250 unit, and now this particular drive is also associated within the TIA portal. Now what I want to do is I want this G120 drive to communicate with this PLC. So if I go to network settings, also inside the TIA portal, what I really want to do is I want this drive to be controlled over Profinet from this 1500 controller. So I simply take that connection, I drag and drop it over to the appropriate controller, to the right Profinet interface, and now this particular drive is being controlled from PLC 1. One more thing to show just real quick. If I go back to the portal view, if I want to add another device, let's just say I want to put another controller inside of this same project. Again, something that's kind of unique in the industry. I'm not going to open up another instance of TIA portal and program this particular new controller. I want it all within this one project management tool. So what I want to do now is I want to bring a 1200 into this particular overall project. So I'll bring in this 1214 and I'll double click him and let him come into the configuration. Again, his device setup looks very similar, almost identical to the 1500. He too is properties driven. I would come in here, do system and clock memories just like what I did with the 1500. Okay, so now I've got some bits that are on with him as well. And if I go look at the network view, now I have this 1500 with his controller network set up, and I can very easily come here and mimic this, with a separate network for example, that this 1200 would be controlling. Or, matter of fact, if I wanted this 1200 to share data up with this 1500, I can very simply make a connection between those two controllers, and those controllers could share information as well. So the whole reason for this is to show you just a quick look inside the TIA portal, what the structures and the tree looks like. Inside the project view on the left-hand side, this is your project tree. This is where all your devices, all your programs, all this information resides. A detailed view down at the bottom tells you what you've selected up here inside of this project view. For example, so if I click on tags and show all tags and look at the default tag table, you'll see the tags that are associated with that 1500. Down at the bottom is the properties of whatever is selected up at the top. So if I select the comfort panel, I get information about the particular comfort panel. On the right-hand side is a hardware catalog, and if I go into a device view, for example, of this HMI screen, let's convert it over to the PLC, for example, the catalog changes for devices that can only go inside of that 1500. If I swap it to the 1200 that's in here, you will notice that the catalog has yet again changed for devices that will go only inside the 1200. One more key feature I want to show you is something on this side called libraries. Libraries are a unique thing, very easy to create corporate standards within your plants. So this latch circuit that I created, and it took me a long time to create that latch circuit, but this latch circuit I created, I'm very proud of it, and I want to save it and other people use it within our organization. So what I want to do is, inside my project library, I have types and master copies. Anything can go inside of this library. So what I want to do is I want to save this latch file into my master copies. So it's saved an identical duplicate of something I've created. I can then take this project library view, this latch circuit, and save it as a global library and publish this out across my servers to all the engineers within my plant. Anything can go into this libraries. I can take a card off of the 1500, for example. Let's say this analog card. This is the card we're going to use in all projects. Take this particular card, load it over there. That's the analog card we're going to use. I can give it a name of whatever I want to call it. This is my tank level analog in, for example. I can name it whatever I want. If I want a complete project, this 1500 is completely programmed, I like it, I take the complete project and dump it into this library. What it's going to do is create an exact duplicate of all the network I set up, all the tags that are set up, all the program blocks that are set up into this particular library. Now I can use this PLC, drag and drop it out of the library for my new projects. Again, this was a quick overview of the TIA portal. My name is Keith Moreland, TIA Product Manager out of Norcross, Georgia. We're very proud of this tool. It is a single engineering framework. We think it'll save you some time and money. Thanks for your time.